The glass door of the bookstore chimed softly as it opened. A gust of cold air swept in, carrying the breath of December. I looked up from behind the counter, about to give my usual greeting, but the words died in my throat. A young girl, no more than 16, stood at the threshold. Her jacket was torn at the shoulder, her backpack was frayed, and her jeans were splattered with mud. Her eyes scanned the room, wary and exhausted, as if deciding whether to stay or turn back. I almost told her we weren't hiring. This small shop barely made enough to keep the lights on. But when my eyes met her face, I froze. That face, something about it was unfamiliar, yet chillingly familiar. I couldn't look away. "I'm sorry. Are you hiring?" Her voice trembled, barely audible. "What's your name?" I asked, my heart pounding for no reason I could explain. "Sophie," she said. "Sophie Ray. My mother's name was Elena Ray." The world stopped. Elena Ray, a name I had buried nearly 20 years ago. I swallowed hard. In that moment, I knew, if my instincts were right, everything in my life, and in this girl's life, was about to change forever. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes the most beautiful chapters of life arrive when you least expect them, especially when you're no longer young. Part 2. I invited the girl inside and closed the door behind her to keep out the biting cold. The wind had stirred a few open books near the front, their pages fluttering like wings. I moved back behind the counter, trying to appear calm while steadying myself. "Have you ever worked in a bookstore before?" "No, ma'am, but I love books. A lot. I can learn quickly." Her hands clutched her worn backpack tightly to her chest. I nodded slightly. "How old are you, Sophie?" 16. I just had my birthday 2 weeks ago." The answer came quickly, like it had been rehearsed. I studied her more closely. Deep brown eyes, a straight nose, slightly crooked teeth. Each detail came alive in my memory like an old photograph. Nathan, my son, when he was about her age. A chill ran through me. "Where are you staying, Sophie?" "There's a shelter 2 blocks from here. I've been there a few days." "You're not from around here?" "No, ma'am. I left the foster center up north about a year ago." I didn't ask why. The story was written in the lines on her thin shoulders, the wrinkles on her clothes, and the way she tried to steady her voice. For 16, her eyes had seen too much. "Your mother?" "Elena," I began quietly. "She's gone?" "Yes, since I was 12. She said my father died before I was born." I nodded, though my chest was storming. Elena. That girl once came to this very bookstore nearly 20 years ago. She'd sit in the back corner, reading poetry to Nathan. When I asked about her, that summer, Nathan only said, "She went home. We broke up." I hadn't thought much of it. But this girl, it couldn't be. The longer I looked at Sophie, the more I listened, the harder it became to deny. There was something in her that belonged to me. "You can start tomorrow," I said. "No pay yet, but there's a sofa and a small bathroom in the back if you need a place to stay." Her eyes widened. You really mean it?" "You love books. That's enough to start." I smiled gently. She nodded quickly, her voice breaking. "I won't let you down, I promise." I handed her the key to the back door and showed her how to lock up at night. Before leaving, she paused at the door. "Why are you helping me?" I looked straight into those eyes, too much like the ones I once held in my arms. "Because you asked," I said softly, "and because I have a job that needs doing." She nodded, clutching her backpack, and disappeared into the white fog outside. I stood there for a long time, silent, watching her go. Her name was Sophie Ray, and if my instincts were right, this was no coincidence. The next morning, when I unlocked the shop at 8 a.m., Sophie was already waiting. The coat was the same, but now she had a worn gray wool scarf wrapped around her neck. In her hands were 2 steaming paper cups of coffee. I figured, "You bought me breakfast yesterday, so today it's my turn," Sophie said, her cheeks a little flushed from the cold. I took the cup and smiled. "Thank you, Sophie." We spent the first morning getting her familiar with the store, how to sort the books, operate the register, where the rare volumes were kept, and especially the poetry corner in the back, where the noon light was always the gentlest. Sophie learned quickly, jotting down careful notes in a small, dog-eared notebook. During the break, I found her sitting cross-legged in the poetry corner, notebook open, writing something. I walked over. "Are you writing?" Sophie startled. It's nothing. Just some scattered thoughts." "I used to write," I said, taking the seat across from her. "When I was young." "Really?" Her eyes lit up. "Yes, then life swept me along. The books stayed, but the words in my head no longer had time to be written." Sophie nodded slightly. "Books are my friends, especially when everything gets too heavy." We sat in silence for a moment. She began to talk about her mother, Elena, who had been a good mother when Sophie was tiny. They used to read together, go to the library on late afternoons. But then Elena quietly sank into darkness. Drugs, disappearances, falls in the bathroom. By the time Sophie was 10, she had learned to hide syringes from the neighbors, call an ambulance, and cook for herself. "I found my mom when she died," she said, staring into the distance. "In the bathroom. I was 12. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there and listened, like a mother who hadn't arrived in time. After Elena's death, Sophie went into the foster system. Cold rooms and guardians colder still. She left at 15. Since then, she'd survived on shelters, libraries, and church food pantries. "I'm still here because I still have books," she said with a faint smile, half bitter, half steadfast. A lump rose in my throat. Not only because of her story, but because I saw myself, 20 years ago, trudging through the frozen months after Arthur, my husband, died, and the loneliness when Nathan, my only son, walked out after an argument about this bookstore. I looked at Sophie. She didn't just share Nathan's eyes. She carried the same kind of hurt. But instead of running, she'd come to books, to an old bookshop, one I thought had nothing left to give. I began to believe that Sophie's arrival wasn't random. A few days later, during a slow afternoon, Sophie approached me with a troubled look. "Miss Maggie, I want to show you something." She pulled a thin book from her backpack, its brown leather cover peeling at the corners. I took it, handling it as if it were something sacred. Inside the front cover were a few handwritten lines, the ink faded. To Sophie, "Never stop believing in the light. Mom and N." I froze. That final N. The handwriting trembled, as if scrawled in a hurry. I'd seen Nathan write like that countless times, in notebooks, on takeout boxes, even on Christmas cards. A slight slant, a faint looping hook, writing you don't forget. I looked up at Sophie, who was watching me with hope, but wary too. "How long have you had this?" "I've always kept it with me. It's the only thing my mom left me. She wrote it a few weeks before she died." I nodded, still gripping the book. Inside me, every doubt had found its answer. Sophie didn't just resemble Nathan. She didn't just have his eyes, his voice, that quiet way of smiling. She was Nathan's child. She was my granddaughter. I stood behind the counter for a long time, emotions mixing, shock, sorrow, anger, and something that glinted like joy being squeezed tight. Nathan had never told me Elena was pregnant. If I'd known, if he hadn't run from it, maybe Sophie wouldn't have had to live a life so adrift, so scarred. But I said nothing. I didn't rush. I knew feelings and handwriting weren't enough. I needed real proof, confirmation, so I wouldn't make a mistake I couldn't take back. Sophie didn't need another shock. That evening, after closing, I sat alone in the small back room of the bookstore. On the table was my old laptop, the screen showing the words I had typed into the search bar. Ancestry testing, family line DNA test. I found a reputable company and ordered 2 kits, one for me, one for Sophie. I would tell her it was out of curiosity about genealogy, about our ancestral origins. something older folks often do. She wouldn't suspect a thing. I looked out the window. Snow had begun to fall, each flake as light as fate's whisper. I thought of Arthur, my late husband, of Nathan, of all the Christmases we'd had. Then I thought of Sophie, the girl who had walked through hell to stand here, in this small bookstore, beside me. If miracles are real, perhaps one was beginning here. "Your ancestors were Scottish?" Sophie asked, surprised, as I placed 2 pale blue boxes on the counter. "At least that's what my grandmother used to say." I smiled. "I've always been curious, but never actually checked. Now that we've got the technology, and I accidentally ordered 2 kits, would you like to try it with me?" She turned the box over in her hands. "I don't even know anything about my ancestors." "Maybe you'll find something interesting." Sophie smiled faintly. "Well, why not?" We did the test that Saturday morning, just a saliva sample, then sealed it and dropped it in the mail. Quick, simple. Yet as I slid the envelope into the red mailbox, my chest felt heavy. Sophie, beside me, on the other hand, seemed amused, like she was playing a game of discovery. Then the 3-week wait began. During that time, the coldest winter in years, the bookstore felt warmer than it had in ages. Not just because the heater was on, but because Sophie was there. She suggested moving the teen section closer to the window. "To attract younger readers," she said. She made cute handwritten signs, labeling shelves by age and theme. Within a week, the number of young customers doubled. Then she had another idea, a monthly book club. I agreed. Why not? The reading room in the back was always empty on Saturdays anyway. Sophie designed flyers, posted them around the neighborhood, and emailed the nearby high school. The first week, 4 people came. The next, 8. By the 3rd week, the room was packed. During breaks, I still caught Sophie in the old poetry corner, writing in her notebook. Sometimes I asked, and she'd smile. Just some stories about things I've been through. I understood better than anyone. Writing was a way to heal, to turn pain into meaning. Though neither of us said it aloud, I could feel it. She was starting to see this place as home. Every morning, Sophie brewed coffee. Every night, she folded her blanket neatly on the sofa and wiped down the counter before bed. Small gestures, but brimming with gratitude and care. Those 3 weeks passed drop by drop. I checked the test account daily, hoping and fearing at the same time. Then, on a Monday morning while I was dusting the front shelves, my phone buzzed. A notification appeared. DNA results available. I took a deep breath. Sophie was in the back room. I opened the laptop and logged in. On the screen, the words appeared clearly. "Match found, grandparent-grandchild Sophie Ray." I couldn't speak. My hands trembled. Sophie was just about to walk out, notebook in hand, her eyes bright with the crisp morning light. And I was holding a secret. One that could change everything. It took me the entire morning to regain my composure. At one point, I almost called Sophie over to tell her everything, but I stopped. This was too big, too emotional to say before I could think clearly. I needed to talk to Nathan first. That afternoon, for the first time in over 2 years, I pressed his number. My heart pounded as the line rang. On the 4th tone, his voice came, cool and detached as ever. "Hey, Mom, what's going on?" "Nathan, I need you to come to the bookstore today." Silence. "It's important. It's about Elena Ray." The pause this time was longer. "Can you come by at 4? "Fine, 4 o'clock. He hung up without a goodbye. I stared at the dark screen, my hand still shaking. Sophie had no idea. I told her to take the evening off, handed her a little money, and suggested she stop by her favorite bakery. When she left, I locked the door, drew the curtains, and waited. At exactly 4:07, Nathan walked in. He wore an expensive coat, his hair slicked back, and a phone in his hand. "What is this about, Mom?" I went straight to the point. Elena had a child, a girl. Her name is Sophie Ray, and she's been working here. Nathan frowned but didn't look surprised. "You already knew, didn't you?" He met my gaze, then gave a slight nod. "She told me once, But I didn't want to be involved. I wasn't ready. Not ready? My voice cracked. Nathan, she's your blood. I made it clear to Elena I didn't want to be a father. She chose to have the baby. That was her decision. My voice broke completely. That girl grew up without a father, lost her mother at 12, lived on the streets since 15. And you feel nothing? Nathan shook his head, face like ice. Don't get emotional, Mom. It's not my fault. I pulled the printed DNA result from under the counter and placed it on the table. He glanced at it, then pushed it away as if it were filthy. I have nothing more to say. If you want to carry the guilt, that's your choice, but don't drag me into it. I clenched the paper in my hand, speechless. The man before me was no longer the boy who used to fall asleep in my arms while I read to him, and I realized some things can't be saved. Some people aren't ready, and never will be. The door opened. Nathan turned and walked out without looking back. Just then, soft footsteps echoed from the back stairway. Sophie. She stood there, pale, lips pressed tight. I knew. She'd heard everything. I'm sorry, I whispered. It's okay, she said, voice trembling but steady. I figured as much. I stepped forward and pulled her into my arms, holding her as tightly as I could. She trembled, silent tears falling onto my shoulder. I may not have a father, Sophie said softly, but I'm not alone anymore. The next morning, I went upstairs to clean the small room on the mezzanine, the one that had once been Arthur's study. It had been years since I last stepped inside. Dust coated the desk, the old lamp, and the shelves where he used to keep his rare prints. Every object carried a memory and a quiet ache. I wiped every corner, washed the bed sheets, and hung a new pale blue curtain. When Sophie returned from her morning walk, I called her up. This room is yours if you want it. She froze, eyes wide. Really? You can't keep sleeping on the sofa, and I think it's time you had a real home. She didn't answer. She simply stepped inside, her hand brushing the old wooden desk. Then suddenly she turned and hugged me tightly. I haven't had my own room since Mom died, she whispered. Thank you. No, thank you, Grandma. It was the first time she called me Grandma. From that day, things changed between us. We were no longer the woman who offered shelter and the girl who asked for work. We were family. No papers, no bloodlines, just presence, affection, and trust. Sophie enrolled in night classes to finish high school. She spent her days working at the bookstore, her evenings studying, and her nights writing in her new room. I'd sometimes catch her typing at 11 p.m., eyes bright, a cold cup of tea beside her. One night, she grinned as she handed me a few pages. I'm writing a story about a girl in an old bookstore, she said, a place where she found home, even though she never meant to look for one. I didn't ask more. I just nodded, my throat tightening. Her book club kept growing. Older readers began joining, then high school students and even a newlywed couple. The bookstore, once the loneliest place in my life, was now filled with laughter, stories, and the gentle murmur of people connecting through words. We even started getting online orders, thanks to the social media account Sophie created and maintained. She had a knack for choosing quotes that made people pause, click like, and place an order. One weekend afternoon, as I was wrapping up shipments, Sophie approached, holding a piece of paper. I just signed up for the high school equivalency exam next month. Do you think I can do it? I looked at her, those once sorrowful eyes now shining. I placed my hand on her shoulder and smiled. I don't think so, Sophie. I know so. Sophie graduated from high school in a modest ceremony at the Community Education Center. I sat in the front row, flowers in hand, eyes never leaving her as she stood in her oversized blue gown. When the name Sophie Ray was called, I shot up, clapping, tears spilling before I could stop them. I did it, she whispered, hugging me afterward. Because of you. You did it because you believed in yourself, Sophie. Everything was falling into place. Sophie wrote regularly, the bookstore thrived, and the attic room was no longer a temporary refuge. It was truly a home. Until that morning. I was making coffee when I heard Sophie call softly from the living room. When I walked out, she handed me her phone. On the screen was a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Sophie. This is Nathan, your father. Your mother may not have told you everything, but your grandmother told me the truth. I wasn't ready back then, but I am now. If you'll let me, I'd like to meet you. I'm sorry for everything." My heart sank. Sophie looked at me, eyes wide, lips pressed together. "What do you think, Grandma?" I sat down slowly. "It's your decision, but I don't think he can be trusted." "Maybe, but what if he really means it this time?" I didn't answer. I knew that feeling all too well, the ache to be seen, to be loved, to hear "I need you" from the very person who once turned away. 3 days later, Sophie and Nathan met at a cafe near the bookstore. When she came back, her face glowed, though her eyes were uncertain. "He was kinder than I expected," she said. "He said he's been keeping up with me from afar, knew I write, knew I live with you." "And you believe him?" Sophie hesitated, then nodded slightly. "I want to believe him." I didn't blame her. Who wouldn't want to believe? They continued meeting, a few coffees, then dinners. Sophie told me little stories. Nathan liked business books, had started a few failed startups, and was working on a new project. I listened quietly, my heart heavy. One evening, Sophie came home with a different expression, no longer bright and hopeful. "He asked me about an investment," she said, "his new startup. He said I'm family and he wants me to be the first to know about the opportunity." I set my teacup down, meeting her eyes. "Sophie, you need to be careful." "I know, but maybe he really means well." I said nothing. The only sound in the room was the steady, tense ticking of the clock. I knew then, the storm was coming. That night, I sat alone in the darkened bookstore, lit only by the faint glow of the desk lamp at the counter. The accounting book lay open before me, but I couldn't focus on a single number. Only one thought ran through my head. Nathan was playing his old game again. 10 years ago, he'd come here with glossy business plans, urging me to sell the bookstore, Dad's outdated legacy, he called it, to fund his next big venture. When I refused, he walked away and cut all contact. And now, the same script was playing out again, only this time, his target wasn't me. It was Sophie. The next morning, I called him. "I want to see you alone, 4 o'clock at the bookstore." "Is this about Sophie?" "It's about everything." Before he arrived, I wrote a small note for Sophie. 4:15. Come to the back door. Don't go in. Just listen. At precisely 4, Nathan walked in, neat, confident, his eyes scanning the room as if appraising its value. "What do you want, Mom?" I met his gaze. "I'm going to sell the bookstore." He froze. "Really?" "Yes, I'm tired. My health isn't what it used to be. But there's a condition." "What condition?" "I'll give you the full amount, $450,000, but you disappear from Sophie's life. No contact. No return." Nathan stared at me like I was joking. Then he gave a short, cold laugh. "You're serious?" "Very." He was silent for exactly 5 seconds. "Fine." My heart cracked. "So all you want is for me to vanish from her life? You get the money, I get freedom. Win-win." I swallowed hard. "Why do you agree so easily?" He shrugged. "Because I don't owe her anything. Sophie's grown up. She's fine. She's got you. She's got books. I'm just a footnote." The back door creaked open, and Sophie stepped out. "Say footnote again," she said evenly, though her eyes were red. Nathan turned, his face draining of color. "Sophie, listen to your grandmother." "I already did," she said. "Every word." Nathan exhaled sharply and looked at me. "You set me up?" "No, you made your own choice." "I thought you'd changed," Sophie said, her voice trembling. "But I was wrong." "You know what?" Nathan said flatly. "That's life. People do what they have to do to get ahead." "And people like you," she replied, tears streaking her cheeks, will never understand what love really means. Goodbye." Nathan turned and walked out, not once looking back. The door slammed shut behind him. Sophie stood still, fists clenched. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around her just as I had that first night. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "No," I said softly. "You just did the bravest thing, believing in someone and being strong enough to let go." A week later, I helped Sophie move her things down from the attic. Not because she was leaving, but because we needed the space to expand the reading corner. Her book club now had more than 20 members. Sophie had found a small apartment 3 blocks from the bookstore. She wanted her independence, but she still arrived every morning as usual, coffee in hand, wearing that same steady smile. "You're not mad at me, are you?" she asked while packing boxes. "No," I said. "I'm proud." Every day we started with coffee and traded little stories. I told her about regular customers and surprise bestsellers. She told me about her new manuscript and ideas for her next novel. Her first book had just been accepted by a small publisher. The signing event was held right here in the bookstore. The room was packed with familiar faces and with teenagers who looked just like Sophie once had, lost eyes, clutching books as if they were lifelines. Before going up to speak, Sophie hugged me. "If it weren't for you, you'd still write," I said. "But with me, you write from love." Her book was titled New Page. On the first page, the dedication read, "To the grandmother who chose me not by blood, but by heart." The following year, Sophie began mentoring teens from the community, kids from foster care, the ones no one believed in. She taught them to write, to read, even how to brew good coffee, because as she said, every good story begins with a warm cup. I watched quietly as she grew, not just into a writer, but into someone who knew how to give back. And me, at 74, I still opened the bookstore every morning. My hands ached, but my heart was calm. One afternoon, as we sat by the window watching the first snow fall, Sophie spoke softly. "Do you think he, Nathan, ever regrets it?" I thought for a moment. Maybe, but it doesn't change anything. "I don't hate him anymore," she said, "but I know. I don't need him." I nodded, taking her hand. "You have me. I have you. That's enough." Outside, snow blanketed the doorstep. Inside, the bookstore glowed with warm light. Customers came and went. A new page had begun. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever lived through a moment that changed your life, share it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the most beautiful chapters begin when you think you've reached the end.